Man, okay, so this is a wild one. As a sailor around the turn of the 19th century, suffering shipwreck in the middle of nowhere was practically a death sentence. So when Carl Emil Pettersson's ship sank in the Pacific Ocean, how lucky was he that he washed up on the shore of an island? Well, the island was inhabited by a tribe among whom cannibalism wasn't uncommon. Tough luck. So imagine the surprise when years later Pettersson returned to his native Sweden alive, and not just that, but as the legitimate king of the island and everyone that lived on it. On the 10th of October 1875, Carl Emil Pettersson was born in a rural municipality named Sollentuna, a bit north of Sweden's capital Stockholm. During these years, Sweden was rapidly expanding its naval business and ocean trade. The Baltic Sea allowed for Swedish merchants to sail all over the world. This included the South Seas and Oceania, a place scrambled with islands, such as Indonesia, which has 18,307 islands. Pettersson too decided to test his fortune on board a merchant ship to travel, work and earn a living around 1892. He found a job at the German Neue Guinea Company, centered in the Pacific, and as such Pettersson embarked on a journey that would most certainly be life-changing. Now, the story goes that that was the last that was heard from Pettersson for a long time. 15 years later, in 1907, he turned up again. The story he told was quite an extraordinary one. Pettersson had worked on board of several merchant ships that sailed through the Pacific Ocean, more specifically the Bismarck Archipelago, named after the unifier of Germany, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. Over centuries, the Dutch, British and French had been wreaking colonial havoc in the region. Anyway, that's beside the point. New Guinea, close by this archipelago, was known for its tribes that had a tendency to practice cannibalism. Throughout his travels, Pettersson had suffered multiple shipwrecks. When in 1904 his ship sunk once again, he washed up on the shore of Tabor Island. It could very well have been the end of him. Perhaps it was luck, perhaps Pettersson was charming to a degree that transgressed language and cultural barriers. He washed up on the shore of what would turn out to be Tabor Island. Lying there, he was discovered by a group of inhabitants, the Tabor tribe. Thing is, the tribe was known for being cannibals. Pettersson, a tall Swedish man with blue eyes and blonde hair, aroused curiosity rather than hunger among the tribe members. Next thing we know, Pettersson has his own coconut palm plantation named Teripax on the Tabor Island, where he would remain for multiple years. The Tabor people started referring to him as Strong Charlie, which can only be an allusion to his physical capabilities. He eventually became friends with a local chief named Lamry, whose daughter, Singdo Misse, fell in love with this tall, blonde Swede. Yeah, the daughter of the cannibal chief fell in love with him. Pettersson returned Singdo Misse's affection and the two became a couple. But it gets even more interesting. We'll get to that in a second. I mentioned that he returned to Sweden in 1907, but sources are a little bit contradictory on this. The earliest Swedish newspapers I could find that wrote about Pettersson's curious story are from 1914. Some sources say he did return home, albeit briefly, in 1907, only to return to Tabor Island. What we do know is that he married Singdo Misse somewhere in between 1907 and 8, all the while expanding his coconut plantation and traded copra, the dried meat of the coconut, to earn a very decent living. Singdo Misse and he altogether had 8 children. Somewhere before 1914, Lamry, the local chief, passed away. Since he only had a daughter, it was only logical her spouse would succeed him, none other than Pettersson. And as such, Carl Emil Pettersson became the Swedish king of the Tabor tribe. In 1914, Pettersson's story breaks through in Sweden. He didn't even turn up on his mother's doorstep with a story such as this one, although it would have certainly have been just a matter of time until the press would run with it. No. Count Birger Mörner, also a Swede, happened to travel in the Pacific area and documented all of his adventures in a book of which I am not even going to attempt to pronounce the title. He happened, maybe by chance, to run into Pettersson and his family on the Tabor Island, documenting their story, taking photographs and publishing his book about his travels. Once he got to Sweden, he gave lectures and Swedish newspapers ran with the story. The photo you're seeing right now is the actual photo taken by Mörner. It is Pettersson together with Singdo Misse and their children. Interestingly enough, Mörner seemed more interested in Singdo Misse's story, though the Swedish newspapers that picked it up were more interested in the shipwrecked sailor that managed to not just survive his encounter with the Tabor tribe, but become their king. In a short amount of time, Strong Charlie became a celebrity in Sweden. He himself maintained a relatively frequent correspondence with Swedish editors, ensuring a decent public profile, even though he was on the other side of the world. His life on the Tabor Island took a tragic turn in 1921, however, when his wife died during childbirth of their 9th child. Pettersson returned to Sweden to find a suitable wife to marry and take back to his island and coconut farms. Swedish newspapers wrote about him as if he were actual royalty. King Carl I and Prince Pettersson weren't infrequent headlines. He found a new wife, Jessie Simpson, who was dubbed Queen Pettersson. In 1923, the couple returned to Tabor Island, but the coconut imperium was crumbling, and to top it all off, both fell ill with malaria. It seemed at one point this misfortune was compensated by Pettersson's discovery of an abundance of gold on his island. To give you an idea of about the size of this gold deposit he discovered, to this day the gold deposit of the Tabor Island is one of the largest in the world. Nevertheless, in 1935, Jessie died of cancer back in Stockholm, as she had to return for medical treatment. Pettersson himself, 2 years later, having kept the gold reserves initially a secret, passed away of a heart attack in Sydney, Australia. And that's the tragic end of Pettersson and his action-packed life. I mean, washing up on the shore of an island with cannibals, pretty incredible if you manage to become the king, right? A fictional sailor that, depending on your age, might remind you of Pettersson is Captain Ephraim Longstocking, the father of Pippi Longstocking. And, well, that isn't too odd. Astrid Lindgren, the writer of Pippi Longstocking, based Ephraim on Pettersson himself. Ephraim too became king of the island where he washed ashore. Swedish author Joachim Langer tried to get to the bottom of exactly how Pettersson inspired Lindgren. Lindgren was very ill by the point Langer started his research back in 2001. She passed away the next year. Lindgren's sister, however, confirmed that she was not just inspired by Pettersson, but developed the story and its protagonist attempting to cheer up her own young daughter, who suffered from pneumonia. Publishing over 15 books about Pippi, once the Second World War ended, many children have grown up with the tales and adventures of Pippi Longstocking and the search for her shipwrecked father, Ephraim. Langer and a colleague eventually published a book about the real-life father of Pippi Longstocking, and once again I have to apologize for not being able to pronounce the Swedish titles. Nearly 100 years after Pettersson washed ashore on the Tabor Island, he is still the center of lively discussion in Sweden, at least among some. I think that's very special. His life certainly was. Thank you for watching this video, and what is a person or event with a curious life story that you would like to know more about and perhaps see a video of? Let me know your thoughts in the comment, and if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel. See you next time.